A modified Robert Jones bandage is used for a number of purposes in the dog and cat. For example, after orthopedic surgery, this bandage can be placed to support the limb and also provide a little bit of compression on the limb, very slight amount, so that you don't end up with excessive swelling. It also can be used to support soft tissue injuries. We're going to use 3 parts for our Robert Jones bandage. If you do a full Robert Jones bandage, you use the 1-pound roll of cotton and you wrap it around the limb and you get this very big limb. If you're doing a modified Robert Jones bandage, which has now become more common, you may choose to use the roll cotton or you may use smaller rolls of cast padding like I'm using. In the Robert Jones bandage, the tips of the toes are going to be sticking out. So I'm going to start either at the top or the bottom, and I'm going to wrap the roll cotton around the limb. For a Robert Jones bandage, I put on a pretty heavy amount of roll cotton. I work my way up the limb, trying not to get wrinkles within my bandage. If I run out and need more, I just overlap slightly and keep going up the limb. I do go above the elbow. And the reason that I go proximal to the elbow is if I start just under, the bandage tends to slip down. If I go above the elbow, the bandage typically is more likely to stay in place. When I have the desired amount of padding on the limb, and I might choose in a modified Robert Jones to put on one more, but whenever I have that amount of padding, then I'm going to go and switch to cling gauze or conform. And what I'm going to do with this is actually to wrap down some of the bulk that's here. And so the bulk of the bandage, this part, it doesn't pull tight, so it's very fluffy. This part can pull very tight, so I have to be careful how it is that I use it. So I'm going to, again, leave the toes exposed, and I'm only going to cover areas where I already put the roll cotton over. Generally speaking, I pull a little bit snugger across the front part of the limb than I do across the back. And I work my way up the limb with each wrap covering up about 50% of the wrap below it. The roll cotton will start to compress, and so the limb overall should get a little bit smaller. But I'm still being relatively gentle in the amount of pressure, the amount of tension that I'm putting on the roll gauze. It is definitely possible to tie too tight and create a bandage that's too tight for them. So we do have to be careful. So that's the second layer. First layer padding, second layer gets some compression. The third layer is to protect the whole thing. So I'm using vet wrap. Vet wrap is very, very easy to over tighten. And so some people will unroll the roll and then roll it back up so that they make sure as they're placing it that it's not too tight. Keep an eye on it. You don't ever want to be stretching it as you're putting it on. Again, the compression's been completed by the layer that's just happened before. I'm going to start just inside where my roll cotton was. And I'm again going to overlap about 50%. So in this case, I'm pulling it loose and I'm going to let it lay so that it's not tight. So as I continue the vet wrap, I'm going to overlap about 50% on the wrap below it and pull the vet wrap out and make sure that I just lay the vet wrap around so that I'm not adding additional tension with my vet wrap layer. If I look at the layer and I see that the texture of the vet wrap shows that it's been stretched, then I've put it on too tight. I work my way all the way to cover the entire limb. In this case, I think I'm going to need a second one just to do the very top, but we'll see. Yeah. So in this case, I'm going to actually need just a little bit more than what came on that roll. So I'm going to overlap the ends. And again, without much tension, place the bandage around. Typically, we leave a small amount of the roll cotton exposed, both distally and proximally. And this helps to ensure that our layers that are tightening it don't tighten into the patient. If you have a patient who tends to chew on the ends of these and pull them out, it's possible you may need to vet wrap all the way up, but typically that's not done. Once you have the bandage placed, then we want to put a little bit of white tape on the bandage so that we can write when the bandage was placed and who placed it. That way we don't accidentally end up with bandages that have stayed on for too long. So this one should overlap. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write the date, and then I'm going to initial it. And that way everyone knows whether it's been changed today or yesterday or whether it needs to be. This bandage allows the tips of 2 or 3 toes to stick out so that I can continue to monitor those toes for swelling. If I find that it's swelling distally, it tells me I put the bandage on too tight and that it'll need to be replaced earlier than scheduled. If this patient goes outside, they're going to need to have a plastic bag or an IV bag around this because it can't get wet or soiled.